welcome back to the Kristen Super Crypt Left Check Ringside Report Show. I have to warn everybody I am starstruck giddy today because of who my special guest is. It is Maysoon Zayid, and she is a role model of mine, not only because she has celebrity status, but because she has accomplished so much, and she uses her presence to be an advocate and combat ableism, islamophobia. What are these accomplishments of hers? Well, I can't go through all of them before the interview starts. I don't want to give it all away, but just a couple of things here. She co-founded the New York Arab American Comedy Festival in 2003. Was featured in the 2013 documentary, The Muslims Are Coming, had the #1 TED Talk in 2014, and she has also had acting roles in the 2008 Adam Sandler film, You Don't Mess with a Zohan, and popular soap General Hospital. But most impressive to me is the fact that she does use her presence to combat Islamophobia and ableism, and she doesn't just talk the talk, she walks the walk. So, welcome, Maysoon.
So I love to say that I limp the limp because I have CP, so I don't necessarily walk the walk, I just limp the limp. Thank you so much for having me. That was such a fun intro. And I love judging people's rooms, and your whole Star Wars thing is really fantastic. It's making me want to up my game.
Me too. And we have a Lego obsession. So a lot of what you see behind me is Star Wars Legos, but we also have Harry Potter Legos. I've got the Hogwarts Castle over here. We just have like a huge collection. What's that?
Which house are you?
I like to consider myself a Gryffindor. My husband thinks he's a Ravenclaw.
You're more of a Hufflepuff.
That's funny. Yeah, you know, I'm a Gemini, and I flip back and forth, so sometimes I kind of think of myself as a Slytherin. So I have my Slytherin stuff and my Gryffindor stuff so that I can do my flip-floppy thing. So,
awesome.
Maysoon, in your comedy, you always bring up that you're from New Jersey. And I know where a person grows up has a lot to do with their, identity and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about how growing up in New Jersey with a disability, and tell us a little bit about what your disability is, too. But what growing up in Jersey is like?
Well, first of all, you get really big hair. So like Jersey is all about big hair, and it's something I've never been able to shake. Like I'd like a nice sleek hairdo, but instead my hair is just always all over the place. So here's what's interesting about growing up in Jersey. I'm growing up in Jersey, the youngest of 4 girls. I mean, I have cerebral palsy. Nobody else in my family is disabled. Nobody in my kindergarten is disabled. I don't meet another disabled student until I get to high school, where there was one girl who was a senior who had one leg that was shorter than the other. And it was like a huge deal for everyone, which was strange because my like super obvious disability wasn't. So I do not know what the key is. I've asked my friends and I've asked their parents. Why was I never bullied? Why was I never made fun of? And what I was told was a bunch of variations of physical abuse that my friends said that their parents would basically beat them if they made fun of me. So I was like, okay, well, you should never be hit, but I'm glad that dissuaded you. But I don't know what the missing link is in the modern day, because as a disability advocate and as a public figure, one of the things I hear from disabled kids and teens is that they're bullied relentlessly, nonstop. And that was just something that I didn't experience in Jersey. But the other most important thing of growing up in Jersey was that I was right next to New York City. So my parents couldn't afford physical therapy. They weren't poor, but disability is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
So instead, they sent me to piano lessons for occupational therapy, tap class for physical therapy. I lived right next to New York City. So that influenced my dream to be a performer, to be on Broadway, to be on stage. I had access to like all that entertainment from when I was 8 years old. And I think growing up next to a city is something that really influences who you become. But I spent my summers in Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up living in a completely different world where there were wars going on. And because there were wars going on, there were a lot of disabled people in Palestine. It was kind of the opposite of New Jersey, where you were seeing people who were wounded all the time. You were seeing people who were, you know, born with disabilities, who had malnourishment. So I lived in two completely separate worlds, and both of them equally influenced who I am.
Very cool. And for people that aren't familiar with cerebral palsy itself, can you describe what cerebral palsy is and how it affects people that have it in different ways, that not everybody has the same symptoms?
So cerebral palsy is super contagious, and you're probably going to catch it right now through the computer. So if like by the time we're done, you see yourself slurring, it's definitely not from whatever you already had. It's definitely palsy. You definitely caught it from me.
Cerebral palsy is super contagious too. So we're probably just like cross-contaminated here.
We're probably cross-contaminating. We don't even, it's a chicken and egg type of thing right now. Cerebral palsy is brain damage. My brain is damaged. So in my case, I lost oxygen at birth. Some people suffer strokes in utero. Some have a traumatic brain injury during delivery. There's a couple of different ways that it can happen, but it's not contagious, it's not genetic, and it manifests itself differently in everyone. So I have to sneeze. Which is better than coughing. There's no one else here, don't worry. I just sneezed on my cat. She's very distracted. Beyonce. It manifests itself differently in everyone. So like for people who have seen the show Speechless, some of us are nonverbal. There are some of us that are wheelchair users. In my case, I shake all the time. Mine is really all about spasticity. I say I'm like Shakira, you know, but also my left side, I have extreme left side pain. And that comes from the fact that like messages from my brain to my body go in all the wrong directions. So it's super exhausting for my muscles and it's exhausting for my nerves. And when I talk to non-disabled parents who have kids with cerebral palsy, it hurts their hearts to know that there is pain associated with it. But I think it's really important for parents to know that like as we, you know, fight through and, you know, try to be the best that we can be, that we're dealing with chronic pain issues along with the other symptoms of cerebral palsy. Like I had years and years and years of vocal training to be able to speak the way that I do. And there's still like a list of words I can't say, including Kamala. It took me like 9 years. And I was like, I am not a bad person that's trying not to learn her name. It's the M's, the repeated M's. I can't do it. I'm like linoleum. And they're like, Kamala. I'm like, linoleum. Like I just couldn't get it. So there are still words to this day that, you know, that challenge me. And my joke on stage is that my CP just makes me look drunk. So I've always wondered if I got drunk, would I walk straight?
And I think I remember you saying that you got to be a designated driver
Yeah, I do a
that
joke.
was not a wise decision.
Yeah, I do a joke on stage where I say, my friend Tina made me the designated driver because Muslims don't drink, or at least we don't admit to it on social media. It's a bad idea because whenever the cops would pull me over, they would think I was wasted and they'd tell me that I needed to walk a straight line. And I'd be like, well, it'd be a goddamn miracle if I can. But the reason I tell that joke is because 50% of all Americans killed by law enforcement are disabled.
Yeah.
And I always end that joke by, my audience is roaring laughing. And I say to them, I was lucky. And then I share that statistic. And then people get mad because they came to a comedy club to laugh, not learn about disabled people being murdered. But I try to educate whenever I can. And that's why I tell that joke, because 50% of people killed by law enforcement are disabled. We ignore the fact that the lion's share of those people are people of color, how people of color in the disabled community are more likely to live in poverty, are less likely to have access to early intervention and educational services for disabled kids. So it's really something that we as a country and we as a disabled community need to know about and fight.
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. And I try to bring attention to that issue about police brutality with people in the disability community, not to take away from Black lives and people of color, but to emphasize the intersectionality. That there is, double the risk for people of color that are also disabled, and so many people are just not aware of that. So thank you for bringing that up.
There's no oppression Olympics, but if there was an oppression Olympics, Black, disabled, LGBTQ people are at a bigger risk than you and I are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because just the way they present, it's a reality. And I think as a community, we need to do better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. So you are a writer, an actor, a comedian. Which one of those came first, and what was the journey?
I was a dancer first. I was a tap dancer first. I'm still a dancer. So I was definitely a dancer first. I'm a comic. Like, if you asked me all the different things that I do, it boils down to I'm a comedian. So my TED Talk was comedic. My writing is comedic. My disability advocacy is comedic. Like, the way that I express myself, the way that I fight injustice is all through comedy. It's who I am, it's my vehicle, and everything else is just a sidebar, but it was not my plan. My goal in life was to be on General Hospital, which thank God I achieved 30 years after that dream began. But my goal was to be on General Hospital, so I was a drama queen. And when I went to study theater at Arizona State University, I used to have weeping spots all over campus where I would sit and cry to see if I was convincing, and I was. So like, my dream was to be an actor. And when I couldn't get cast because I didn't see people on television who looked like me, where I saw them was in the world of stand-up comedy. Richard Pryor, the original shaking comic of color. People like Whoopi Goldberg and Rosie O'Donnell and Doris from the Drew Carey Show. The others, the weirdos, the people who didn't fit in were in comedy. So that's where I found my voice. When I became a comedian, it was what I was born to be. Because especially right now in this very terrifying time for disabled people, where our rights are under siege, I feel like comedy is the last bastion of free speech, the last place where we can really push it to the wall and talk about the things that other people have forgotten to focus on or are afraid to talk about.
Mm-hmm. I really feel like it breaks down walls too for people that just haven't had much experience or just have not had much contact with somebody with a disability. Using that comedy makes you more relatable. It makes it easier to kind of break the ice and people to, ask questions and see the human side of people.
Yeah, and see, that's not what I do with my comedy at all because I don't buy it, right? We're 25% of the population. If you're not disabled and you don't know a disabled person, it's because you're not paying attention. But what I try and do instead is shine a spotlight on their own bigotries, on their own fears, on their own misperceptions, so that they can look inward at the way that they have treated disabled people, at the fear they have of becoming disabled, of, you know, the things that they have done that they now regret, like, you know, leaving their car in that disabled spot for 35 seconds just to run in and coming out and finding their tires slashed, because I'm from Jersey and we're quick. I'm palsy, but I'm quick. You know what I mean? And so my job is not, and I've told people this often, my job is not to educate, it's to illuminate.
I love that. I do love that. And not everything can be a teaching moment because we're not all teachers and we don't have.
Yeah, I'm not the teacher. Like, you know, I just had a really disturbing incident with the New York Times. And the New York Times decided to do a special section to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the American
I read some of that.
And they chose not to have a disabled editor. So how are you celebrating equal access for people with disabilities to employment and education and rights and not putting in a disabled editor? But during that experience, like, I literally encountered people who were like, we don't want opinions. We just want a glossary. And I was like, I'm not a teacher. I'm not here to teach you. I'm a comedian. Comedians have opinions. Figure it out. And then I went to Refinery 29 and they published it, while the New York Times went ahead and did some educational feel-good pieces. And like I said, do I think that there are people who have no idea that the people around them have mental health issues, chronic pain, lupus? Sure, they don't know, because not all disabilities are visible. Not all people are ready to share their diagnosis because of the stigma. But the idea that a grown adult has never encountered a disabled person is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like they always tell me they've never met a Muslim. And I'm like, have you been to the doctor? You've met a Muslim.
Right. That's funny. And, you know, I had all my questions like in a certain order and everything, but now that we're talking and it feels just like more organic, I'm just going off the top here. Some of what you just said reminded me of a topic that's really important to me, and it's inspiration porn. I did not know what that even was for a long time. All I knew is that when I would see certain representations of a person with disability, I always felt but left with this kind of icky, uncomfortable feeling after seeing it. And I couldn't even really put my finger on what it was about it that just bothered me so much until I saw somebody put a link to the Stella Young Facebook. And when she described it and put it into words for me, I was like, light bulb, like aha moment. That's what that is. Can you, because you're much better at explaining these things, talk a little bit about what is inspiration porn and what is the harmful effects of it?
First of all, rest in peace, Stella Young. God bless her. I was blessed and lucky enough to know her and love her. And I think everyone should watch Stella's talk. Also, do you know who coined the term inspiration porn?
No.
Me. So I think I can explain. and God bless her, Stella always said it was Maysoon. People with disabilities are 25% of the population, but we're only 2% of the images that you see in media. Of that 2%, 95% are non-disabled people playing disabled on screen.
Yep.
What inspiration porn is when we see disabled images, they are often framed in one of three ways: charity / pity, Heal me slash fix me, or kill me slash better off dead.
Yep.
What that means is a lot of non-disabled people watch a video of, say, captain of the football team taking wheelchair user to the prom, and they think, one, I'm so happy I'm not in a wheelchair. I'm so happy my kid's not in a wheelchair. Two, what a great guy. He's taking that poor, pitiful, disabled person who no one could possibly actually be in love with to the prom. What they're not thinking is, maybe the wheelchair user is a lot cooler than the football player. Maybe the football player is really lucky to be going to the prom with the wheelchair user. Maybe they are truly and genuinely in love, and the fact that one is disabled and one, you know, displays as non-disabled is not a barrier to that relationship, because you can love people who are disabled. We are not happy snowflake angel babies.
Yeah.
We do grow up, we do get married, we do have guys named Eddie that jump onto the screen every once in a while. But there's a further point of inspiration porn, which is when we put these disabled kids on screen and then we pump money into whatever organization is run by non-disabled people so that we can fix these broken children by any means necessary. Obviously, I'm calling out hate organizations like Autism Speaks, where we know that they're causing harm to the autistic community, where actually autistic adults have said that their tactics are abusive. Where for me, when I watch their videos, it's beyond inspiration porn. It's terrifying and chilling and dehumanizing and eugenics. And you have people who feel so good about lighting blue, who feel so good about putting that puzzle piece, because they want to do something. They genuinely want to do something, and they get suckered into doing something that's actually harmful for our community. Then there is the most harmful type of inspiration porn, which is better off dead. There are movies that are like Me Before You,
Yeah.
and $1 Million Baby, that glorify disabled people dying. They romanticize it by making it look like her parents were so much better off without the burden. The person that they loved could finally be free to go hiking instead of having to find a wheelchair accessible restaurant, you know? And what that leads to is how the media and journalists cover the murder of disabled children by parents and caretakers. We have a day of mourning for children who are killed by their parents and caretakers. And when a disabled child is murdered, the news often sympathizes with the killer. They say things like, they were overstretched, they couldn't find support, they were dying and they didn't want their child to be left alone. You never hear justification for any other child's murder except for disabled children. And I think that inspiration porn that glorifies and romanticizes our deaths leads to us being killed with no remorse, and our deaths being reported as mercy instead of murder, and it's dangerous. It's harmful.
Yeah. You
How
got
do you feel?
territory in that. No, I'm so glad that you covered that, because you know there's only so much time that I have with you, and trying to like prioritize what are the most important points that I can touch upon.
Well, the most
You got
important
so
point,
many right there.
I'm going to jump in with the most important point, which is I've spent 20 years working on one mission and one mission alone, and that is that disabled actors play disabled roles on screen, especially visibly disabled roles. I feel like visible disability, much like race, cannot be played. And I think that if kids turn on the TV and every time they see a disabled character, they then see that person miraculously healed as they glide down the red carpet, the message we are sending, the message we're sending is you're not welcome. There's no place for you here. That in the world of fantasy, in the world of reality, in the world, why has The View been on television for 21 years without a visibly disabled woman? Why has there never been a deaf co-host. Why?
Yes.
Why? Because
what you just referred to, I've heard referred to as crip face.
So I heard it referred to as crip face, but we stopped using that because we don't want to appropriate blackface. That had a much different history than ours. So I go with cripping up.
Okay.
I go with cripping up. Yeah. But I've heard, you know, a lot of our Black disabled friends be like, hey, you know, blackface and crip face are not the same thing because it erases the overlap with the Black community. And also because with the minstrel shows, it's just such a different background. But the reason that I compare it to race is because, like, I thought it was offensive for Scarlett Johansson to try and play an Asian character. I find it offensive when Indians play Arabs. It's a totally different race, and it happens a lot. So when I say that playing visible disability, just picture this. Can you imagine watching someone try to imitate how my mouth moves?
I can, and
so uncomfortable.
I've seen, obviously, because we've been talking about it. I've seen plenty of abled actors and actresses trying to imitate, you know, these, I guess, symptoms you could call it of a disability.
You don't just see them playing. You don't just see them playing.
It's like
you see them winning. You see them winning. Disabilities win awards. Rain Man, Forrest Gump, Tom Cruise got nominated for playing a wheelchair user. They win awards, and we watch it and we see cartoonish. We see offensive. We see inauthentic. And I think that the reason that disabled people are not cast is because people don't think we can do it. And the reality is the talent exists. And if you're not spending all of your time focusing on how to use a wheelchair when you've never driven one before in your life, you can focus on the acting. The idea that there's not a single disabled actor that's good enough to play the role better than a non-disabled actor is just a form of discrimination. It's not real. And we're breaking barriers, but we're not breaking them enough. We're not breaking them enough when The Good Doctor is still on television. Like, we need shows like The Good Doctor to be off of TV. It is so offensive to have non-disabled actors playing disabled on screen.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think, like how you said, that when people watch this, they think that people that actually have the disabilities couldn't do it, that they couldn't act. I think that that's why the representation in the media extends to all other forms of discrimination against the disability community, because you know, the reason that we don't have equal opportunity and employment, and the reason that we don't get regular education or equal access to education, and all of those things start with people's misperceptions and attitudes about disability, which comes from the perception that they have of disability from what they see
from media. Yeah. It's a vicious cycle. Really, so much of our perception comes from media. That's why, like, I do the whole Lost Kardashian thing with, like, the hair and the clothes and the makeup, because I'm trying to bring sexy back to disability, because we've been dehumanized, we've been desexualized, we've been treated and infantilized. And so it's our job, you know, as disabled adults to get out there and say, we exist. We deserve equal rights, and every single issue that people are fighting for, whether it's equal pay, whether it's marriage equality, whether it's LGBTQ rights, all of those issues are disabled issues because we intersect with every single other community. But we have to go. I'm 6 minutes late for my next thing, so I gotta run. But this was so incredible. I'm so sorry I'm so overbooked because I don't know how this happened. but I went from doing absolutely nothing from March to May to having like an 11 p.m., a 12 p.m., a 1 p.m., a 2 p.m. Zoom. And I have to change my outfit for every single one. But I loved hanging out with you. And I hope that we can meet again and that someday someone puts together an amazing disability panel talk show and realizes how built in the diversity is, even if we're all disabled and they think only disabled people will watch it.
I would love to see that too. And Maysoon, I'm not going to keep you any longer, but thank you so much again for being my guest. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for the invite. Stay alive.
Okay. You too. Bye.